Not every deck is built to win. Some are built to challenge us, to push the limits of what's possible, to take the most obscure, unlikely mechanics and force them into something playable. Every niche deck has its own struggle, a lack of real payoffs, sometimes a fragile game plan that can fall apart with a simple misstep, and other times just a total lack of support in the entire archetype from start to finish. But that is what makes them worth playing. The journey of refining, optimizing, and when it finally all clicks, watching your deck do something truly unexpected and unseen before. That's the real thrill of deck building. Today, we're diving into one of these weird, wonderful creations, a deck that shouldn't work, but just might. Let's get started. So if you know anything about me, you know I build a ton of decks, and you know that in most cases, these decks are meant to be refined, they're meant to be optimized, and they're meant to have a coherent strategy and a clear game plan. I typically play a lot of really supported strategies or a lot of generic things that most other players play. I'm not a huge guy when it comes to being unique in Magic the Gathering, but every once in a while I might find myself seeing a very niche strategy that ends up catching my eye and I want to end up building. Now, luckily, it's easy for us as a YouTube channel collective to know how to build these decks. We've talked about Oracle text, we've talked about finding ways and figuring out how to actually strategize a deck, and we have pretty good templates on how we can build most of these decks in general. We know that we have to have some ways of drawing cards through this, we have to have some synergistic removal that can tie into it, we have to have a pretty decent land base, and of course we have to have at least enough support to make something like this work. In most cases, this is pretty easy to do, but with the deck we're talking about today, it did take me quite a while to figure it all out. And surprisingly, I keep running into cards that actually can fit this strategy. And that's where you come in. Not only am I asking you to like the video, not only am I asking you to subscribe to the channel, but I'm asking you for your help so we can keep optimizing this list. But you've probably been asking now, what is this build? What is this strategy? And what is the commander to this deck? Now, I don't want to hold you on the line for even longer. It's Adrix and Nev. Adrix and Nev twin casters. What is so unique about that commander? It's just a token doubler. Don't you just play clones? Don't you just play any other token generator and try to use value in order to just win the game? Simic good stuff, you know? No, my friends. That is where this deck becomes unique to most other decks, if not every deck. And here is some background. In Magic the Gathering Standard, there is an archetype of decks called Cookies. It stems from a card from Wilds of Eldraine titled Tough Cookie. Now, when Tough Cookie enters the battlefield, it creates a food token. But for 2 generic and a green, you can turn a target non-creature artifact into a 4/4 artifact creature until end of turn. This archetype of deck aims to use cards like Caste of the Filch Falcon, Zoetic Glyph, and Tough Cookie in order to turn your artifacts that are specifically not creatures into creatures and play beatdown from there. It is a super unique strategy and one that I have found incredibly interesting when playing in Standard myself. So that is the strategy that we are looking to build. Now, why did I choose Adrix and Nev? Well, there could be a lot of other commanders that might actually fit this strategy a little bit better. The thing is, though, is Tough Cookie makes a food token. Caste of the Filch Falcon makes a clue token. And in Commander, there are so many other ways to make treasures, clues, and foods that we might as well be doubling them with a guaranteed token doubler in the command zone. And the reason why is because we're a bit more commander pilled. We cannot just turn one of our cookies into a 4/4 and expect to win a game of commander. No, my friends, we need to make an entire board state of these cookies and make them turn into big creatures. Because of this, we run a ton of ways to make these tokens. Bootlegger Stash, Noble's Purse, Academy Manufactor, Nuka-Cola Vending Machine, all of these cards are absolutely vital to our strategy, and Adrix and Nev just pump them up that much more. This deck is the definitive Cookies Commander deck. Is it janky? Absolutely. Is it effective? Well, but is it fun and is it unique to most any other commander decks out there? Absolutely. So you might be asking why I even like this in the first place. I used to be a person that hated artifacts in Commander, and just in Magic in general. For whatever reason, I just didn't like artifacts. But slowly but surely, as I grew into more of a well-versed player, things like Spellslinger, artifacts, Simic, and a lot of other things, I've slowly grown to appreciate over time. And I believe that this deck is the culmination of exactly that. It is such a unique and interesting and weird strategy that for whatever reason just scratches a part of my brain that I can't get over. And we're going to be talking about it today. So let's get right into it. So, Cookies deck. What are we doing? Well, we can't talk about turning into the cookies until we have these cookies. So, this deck is full of token makers, whether it's food, whether it's treasures, maps, or clue tokens. We have plenty of them. We have some that make a treasure every turn. We have other cards that require something else to happen but give you consistent payoffs. And of course, even some of our counter spells and removal include these token creators. Pretty much everything in this deck, whether it's removal, ramp, tutoring, card draw, or just normal cards, make you some sort of token. If you take a look at the list, we have 20 distinct token creators, but if you look at the actual deck, pretty much everything in this list makes some sort of token of those three types or map tokens. I personally love how so many of these options are maybe a little bit less than optimal, but because they add into something else and we have a doubler on top of it, we get a ton of value out of these spells. Our ramp package is pretty simple. Now, we do in fact have 3 cards that don't give us anything, but they are just some really great 2-mana ramp for our 4-mana commander. A card like Gilded Goose is great because not only can it help you add mana, but also it can create the foods themselves. Heaped Harvest is really great as it is a food itself, which means you can turn this into a creature, and of course it helps you ramp. Return from the Wilds and They Went This Way are effectively the same card, but one makes a clue from being in Murders of Karlov Manor, and the other makes a food from being in Wilds of Eldraine. Now, let's talk about how we're going to turn these foods, into creatures. These artifacts that we just have laying around, we don't do anything if we can't turn them into creatures. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. We have 4 ways of animating every single artifact on our battlefield. This is through Cyberdrive Awakener, Rise and Shine, the Antiquities War, and Tezzeret the Seeker. These 4 cards are able to turn every single artifact we have into a creature with either 4/4 or 5/5 toughness. These are our biggest payoffs, and having something like a Beastmaster Ascension on top of that is going to really help us win the game when it gets to that point. Beastmaster Ascension is also just really good as eventually when you get to that 7, your 4/4 artifacts that you're animating turn into 9/9 artifacts. And just that boost is really great. Now, of course, taking the amount of time necessary in order to get this to that many counters, who knows how possible that actually is, but it can help us if we ever turn our entire board into artifact creatures. Besides that, we just have creatures that are allowing us to animate these tokens at least once per turn. Pretty much every Tezzeret gives us this effect. We have 2 enchantments that allow us to do this. We have Oko, Thief of Crowns, which technically does this. 1, it makes a food, but 2, if you +1 it, you can turn one of your artifacts into a 3/3 elk. Now, I'm not 100% sure if it stays an artifact, but it will be a 3/3 green elk. Besides that, we have about 15 total ways of animating these creatures, which is surprisingly a lot of support. Basically, what I did is I oracle texted a bunch of different ways of how you could phrase this effect, and this is mostly what I could find that was really efficient. There's a lot of other ways to do this, but most of the time they say its power and toughness are equal to its mana value, which means we're not able to do it, as they would immediately die. But I have found that this is enough support that the strategy is not completely useless. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room though. Like we said in the intro, there's really only a couple payoffs to a strategy like this. It is such a niche strategy and such a niche game plan that it's really hard to find the cards consistently in a game. This is why I truly believe it is okay that we are playing tutors in this deck. We have Worldly Tutor, Fabricate, Treasure Mage, Mystical Tutor, and Tezzeret. We also technically have Repurposing Bay, but that is kind of a tutor, but it has a single line. Repurposing Bay can turn a 2-mana or 3-mana artifact into first your Tempting Contract, then the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, and then you can turn Repurposing Bay into your Cyberdrive Awakener. It's pretty obvious after a couple turns, but it certainly is a possible win con. Mystical Tutor also allows us to get Rise and Shine. Worldly Tutor gets us Cyberdrive Awakener. Treasure Maze also gives us Cyberdrive Awakener. Fabricate also does the same thing. In most cases, Cyberdrive Awakener is going to be the easiest way that you can tutor something like this up. But we still do have 3 other win cons that allow us to do this, which we've mentioned before. In terms of land base, it's a pretty normal land base, except we do have some token makers as well in Treasure Vault, Fountain Port, Kitchen, and Volatile Fault. Volatile Fault actually technically gets us our mana back because it's going to make 2 treasure tokens, but we do lose a land from doing so. So this is kind of an optional include if you don't want to lose your land. Besides all that though, this is a pretty unique strategy and I have loved building it. It's been an absolute blast finding different and unique cards that are able to go in a deck like this. And surprisingly, even with all the niche effects that we're trying to pull off in a food deck like this, we're able to find plenty of removal that is just as synergistic with our strategy as it needs to be. Most of our draw effects do the same thing, and we surprisingly have a lot of gas, but only a niche couple of payoffs. This deck has been a ton of fun to brew, and I would love to see y'all's comments on how I could improve it even more. This video should be a sign to you if you have not ever made a really weird deck with really weird payoffs. It doesn't need to be completely unique. In most cases, somebody has probably already done the strategy that you might be thinking of. That doesn't mean that you can't put your own spin on it, no matter how weird it might be. If you have ever made a weird strategy like this and weird payoffs, please let me know in the comments below. And in the comments, please let me know what other cards I could add to a strategy like this. I really need to know so I can refine this list even more. Just because it's doing something weird doesn't mean it has to be weak. If anything, the weird strategies that are strong tend to actually win more because most people have no clue what it's doing. So you can be a little sneaky with it. Either way, I have been Deck Driver and thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you guys all next time.